So we're going to talk about, I'm calling this talk Good Bones. We're going to talk about the value of core facility infrastructure for successful AV installations. So, quick agenda. Going to tell you a little bit about me, make some shameless plugs. I'm going to start with a cautionary tale of how this goes wrong. Then we're going to talk about why this infrastructure matters, some things you might want to think about with regards to key infrastructure, how you make friends with the people who can help you get this done right, and then we'll kind of end with some Q&A time. So, for those of you who weren't here this morning, I'm Mike Pedersen. I'm the audiovisual experience manager at Iowa State University. We are an in-house integration team, hashtag in-house integrator. I'm in my 6th year at Iowa State, and prior to that, I worked almost 19 years at a commercial integrator called Mechdyne Corporation. I'm very, very active in the industry at large. I'm currently the 1-year at-large board member for HETMA. You've probably seen me. I'm actually here at the conference technically representing HETMA, not technically representing Iowa State. I am a columnist for Higher Ed AV Media. Our team actually won the AV Team of the Year in 2023 from Higher Ed AV Media. ETC is another organization, formerly CCMC, very involved there, as you can see. And Avixa, I'm 2018 CTS Holder of the Year, and been really involved with Avixa for a long time. Iowa State University, we were an R1 public land grant and space grant university, founded in 1858. Our enrollment last fall was just over 30,000 students. We have 10 schools and majors, 10 schools and colleges, 100 majors. One of our claims to fame is that the first electronic digital computer was invented here in 1942. And it's in a quaint little Midwest town called Ames that often makes the top 10 lists of, best small college towns and all that type of thing. So it's a really great place. All right, so some shameless plugs. Again, I mentioned HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. We are an advocacy organization, all volunteer to promote the needs of higher education within the broader pro-AV market space. A couple of big projects that we have going on that we're really excited about. One's called the PRISM Scholarship. It is a scholarship program for young professionals in higher ed audiovisual looking to improve their skill set. In particular, we're looking at underrepresented individuals, and it offers them everything they need if they win the scholarship to get their CTS. All the tests, the test is paid for, the book's paid for, all the classes are paid for. They get a free trip to Infocom. They get a mentor assigned all year. So it's a really great program. We're excited about that. We also have what's called the HETMA Approved program, where manufacturers send us their hardware. We evaluate it, like we being actual higher ed audiovisual technology managers, right? Get it at their schools. We evaluate it. We fill out an evaluation form. If it passes, then it gets the HETMA Approved logo as something that's HETMA has said will work well in higher education. Higher Ed AV Media actually is a subsidiary of HETMA. This is a great location for podcasts and articles around all things, imagine, higher ed audiovisual. So would encourage you to go check that out. I write a column semi-regularly called Integrator Insights, so might want to check that out. The other thing I forgot to mention this morning is if you want to have a voice in the higher education AV market space, by all means, reach out to us. We are always looking for new voices, new columnists, people to be a guest on a podcast or two. So check us out, look us up. Then ETC, Educational Technology Collaborative, formerly known as CCMC, great organization for professional and leadership development in particular. Some really outstanding collaboration in this organization. Just the best people. Just great people. So we encourage you guys to check them out as well. And then finally, we are hosting the ETC conference in the fall here at Iowa State, or not here, but at my school, Iowa State University, October 1st to the 4th. So save the date. We would love to have you all there, and we're looking forward to a really, really fun conference hosted at Iowa State. All right, so shameless plugs out of the way. Let's let's do a cautionary tale here. All right, so we had a new building that went up at Iowa State called the Student Innovation Center. Now, if you come for the ETC conference, you're all going to get an evening of fun and digging around in the Student Innovation Center. So it will be a really great time. But it was a brand new building. It opened in 2020, 140,000 square feet. And of course, it's the Student Innovation Center. So you're thinking, great, high tech, all kinds of fun stuff. So the detailed design work for this was occurring around 2016, 2017. At some point in history, in their grand wisdom, a former CIO laid off all the senior AV staff at the university in that same time frame. So there was no in-house AV experience available right when they were trying to figure out all the important things for this cool new building. In addition, they selected a GC, but the audiovisual contractor was not selected at the same time, and it was significantly delayed in their selection. So we did not have an audiovisual contractor, we did not have an in-house team, and well, anyway, it didn't go bad. It didn't go well. So it was really bad from the start. Other problems that we had was this whole building there was really it was supposed to be a building for everyone, right? That was the thing. A building, so I heard someone say once that if everyone's assigned to something, no one is assigned to something. And 100% true here. There was no space ownership. It was designed by committee. AV needs were kind of trying to figure that out in a vacuum. Again, no AV experts from ISU were involved. The AEC consultants were planning for some really, really basic AV, not what the building was really needing from the name of it. So infrastructure, as we're going to be talking about, was not being considered very well for current and future new technologies. And so this lack of vision led to a significant underfunding for AV and infrastructure in the initial plan set. So final room owners were still being decided 2 years after the breaking of ground on this building. And of course, after they were signed, they all had opinions of what AV should be going into their space, and rightly so. I mean, it's like, yeah, they should. Then those changes need to be approved at multiple levels. It became a disaster, right? So I joined the university in July of 2018, right in the middle of this disaster. And so we were trying to make this work, right? But, we would estimate that the facility changes that we need to go back, like we were knocking out drywall. There's drywall up, painted. We were knocking it out to put new conduits in to support AV where we needed it. They were coring out concrete. This is a brand new building, right? So it was, we estimated it was probably more than $200,000 in change fees just from the AV infrastructure side in this new building because they didn't do it right from the beginning. So there's your cautionary tale. Don't do that, okay? So here we go. So why infrastructure matters, okay? So it matters a lot. And some of this should be obvious, right? Some of it's self-explanatory, but we'll kind of cover it anyway. Of course, one of the big things from an AV perspective is it really helps with the installation. If you have, let's say you have some potential hard cable pulls. The magic solution is conduits, right? We can get them in the right spot. Let's say you have a challenging mounting scenario. Well, we can put some backer board in place. Or if you have to mount some devices behind a flat panel monitor, how do you do that? Well, you can put a back box in place and have a place to neatly store your little device. So it can really just make things a whole lot easier along the way. In addition, it makes future upgrades easier if you have a good core infrastructure. Even if the AV is not everything that you wanted day one, if you have the right infrastructure behind it, it makes upgrading that to future technologies a whole lot easier down the road. It just matters from a coordination perspective, making sure everyone is on the same page and knows what needs to be happening there. Safety is another big thing that the right infrastructure can help. we have a ton of classrooms, older buildings have not been touched in a while, where there is no power. The teaching station is a table in the middle of a floor with no outlets in the floor, outlets on the wall behind them. Guess where they plug in their laptop? They don't have a choice. They have to plug their laptop in behind them. Where they're walking back and forth in front of the chalkboard, it's not a great scenario. And we're doing our best to try and improve it, but there's just a limitation at this point, and it's just not good. So it also gives us proper mounting points, right? Nice, strong, secure places to mount things. And then in addition, it can make aesthetics a lot better. How often do we have to go back in and add surface mount raceway because the conduits were not in place, right? Not that surface mount raceway is horrible, but is not the most aesthetically pleasing thing when you could have had conduits behind the wall. So it just helps from an aesthetics perspective too. So there's a ton of reasons why getting this right from the beginning is very, very important. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the key infrastructure would be. All right, so let's talk about boxes and pathways, right? So that's the first area I want to talk about. So you can see some of the things here that it covers. So junction boxes, of course, those are the square boxes that electrical things run through. They're mounted in the wall. Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that there are 4-inch by 4-inch boxes, and then there are 4 and 11/16 by 4 and 11/16 boxes, and they don't match. Plates for one do not fit on the other. So you got to make sure that you know what you're doing. The other beautiful thing about the 4 and 11/16 inch boxes is that you can actually get 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 conduits in them, where you typically don't have the right knockouts for a 4-inch by 4-inch box. So understanding some of those things are going to make your life a whole lot better along the way. Back boxes, that's what I'm showing here in this picture. This is a box in the wall behind a display, typically. It gives you a place to plug in your power. It gives you a place to drop cables into. It gives you a place to mount small devices and still meet that 4-inch rule. That's very critical for ADA compliance. Just so many good reasons to make that a part of your infrastructure standard. Floor boxes, again, if you're going to have a teaching station in the middle of a room somewhere, having a floor box is the only way to eliminate a lot of trip hazards and to make things safer. So making sure that you have, what you need for floor boxes and those types of things. Conduits and cable trays, we're talking about pathways here, making sure that they're big enough. I've never ever once heard somebody say, man, we had too many conduits and they were too big. Has anyone ever heard that?
When you're mounting a speaker into the pile, they're all
well, I suppose that's true. Fair. I will give you that one, actually.
Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I will give you that one. But no, so more and bigger is always better when it comes to conduit, and just making sure that you have what you need for the future as well. So, I'm going to kind of run through these kind of generically, but we're going to show some standards here at the end, and it's going to give you some more specifics, and I'm going to give you what our infrastructure standards are, so you can go in and see a lot more of the details behind all of these, as far as at least how we have them defined, to give you some more of those details. So electrical. Okay, so the other thing you want to be thinking about in making sure you get your infrastructure right is, of course, your electricity, where you want power. Where are the outlets and how many of them are there? How good is your grounding? Do you need any special grounding? Are your racks grounded? For a general AV rack in a classroom, does it need to be grounded? No, probably not. Should it be? Yes. Most of them get grounded, through more than one, device that's rack mounted anyway from a safety perspective. But if you have a rack that's really a specific for a recording venue for audio or video, should that rack have a specific grounding cable to it? Yes, it should. And you should make sure that you get that into the specifications and make sure you get that done right. Another thing that is to think about is noisy devices. So one thing we have written in our infrastructure specifications is that Any outlets used for audiovisual devices shall not share circuits with blah, 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 list of devices. Overhead garage door openers, fluorescent lights, because these are devices that are these are noise generating devices on an electrical pathway, right? So, when that overhead door opens, that motor is going to put some noise back on the electrical outlet that it's on. And so we want to make sure that we try and avoid those things sharing same circuits with our audiovisual devices. So you want to just note some of those things and make sure you get that specified. Structural. Let's talk about backer board. So you can see here, this is a back box again for a flat panel display. And what you see here is they have what we're refer to as backer board, where they put some plywood, or in this case, that's actually looks like 1x or 2x that they have mounted in there. So when you go to mount your device, you know that you are mounting to more than just drywall. And you have a nice secure place. And in fact, if you know that you have this back there, you can just come in with some lag screws and go, shoop, and you are done, right? And it's going to be nice and secure. You've got that wood backer, and you're good to go. It makes the install go a whole lot faster too, as well as being safer. You also want to think about mounting points for your projectors or projection screens. We have standard details that we have drawn now where it calls out, we need this kind of unistrut, and this dimensions above every projector mounting location, right? So, can the AV contractor or can my team go up to the deck above and, put some concrete anchors in and do that? Yeah, they can. They do it all the time. But is it easier if the GC does it while they're there with their lift? And they're absolutely way easier, right? So, again, if you can get these things done early, it provides a nice, well-known, secure mounting location for your projector, for your projection screens when you go to do the install. Yes?
In your design, in your specifications, do you specify that when they're using these chief backer boxes, that they need to put the outlets and data jacks in the punch outs?
Yes.
We had these put in, and then they just brought in, and then they mounted
Yep. So
everything inside the box.
So we specify the box number specifically that has, it comes with this outlet panel off to the left, which actually has some surge protection built into it also. And so we specify that box number specifically, so that it comes with that. And then we also specify, for the network jacks, we specify that there's supposed to be a deep 1 gag box.
Yeah.
There's a punch out right here, is a deep 1 gag box with a conduit up above that, that they can mount the network jacks. So it's actually recessed even flat flush with the inside of the box, right? So
I think what you're trying to get at though is you can say I want a backer box, you can say I want data
yep.
there too, but if you don't tell the contractor
To
to
use
use shells,
the punch out.
install it in the punch out,
Right.
You'll get your data, but
You will.
It'll be on a biscuit or something that's hanging
Yeah.
in the box.
it could be a service front box, it could be in
Right.
wood next to it.
It takes up room where you want to put
Right.
your stuff.
Yep. So you need to be specific, right? And that's right. That's right.
Because if you're not specific, they get to interpret.
Right. That's right. Lighting. It's another thing you want to think about with regards to infrastructure, right? So zones in particular. The fact of the matter is, and actually I'm a big proponent of this, projection and projection screens are still going to be viable for a long time. The solid state projector has saved the projection industry from impending doom, and I really think that just for so many scenarios, the flat panel display technologies to the sizes that we need to meet DISCUS standards for most of our classrooms are just still going to be prohibitively expensive for most schools. So we're going to be in the projection business for a long, long time. So part of making sure your lighting is done right is making sure that the lights that are above your projection screen are in a separate zone that can be turned off separately from the rest of the lights, right? So there's just some things like that. You just want to be making sure you're thinking about those things in your infrastructure early and often.
They don't hang down in the path.
Right. Yep. So yes. So that's another. That was actually another part of the story of the Student Innovation Center, is they all had lights that different than these, but they had lights that were hanging down that were right in the projection path, right? Because no one thought about it because projection was not in their early design thinking, right? So we had part of the design changes where they had to go back in and lift up some lights because we couldn't get the projectors in place without them casting shadows. So cameras also are a big part now and forever, right? And so having good light on your the speaker is also a very important aspect of what you should be thinking about doing when you're defining your specifications. Contrast ratios, making sure that, again, this goes back to keeping light off the screen, but making sure that your contrast ratios are in the 3-to-1 ratios that AVIXA specifies. Another thing that is important, this is also for camera lighting though, is the percent direct versus indirect. You need to understand how much of your light is coming direct on the individuals and how much of it is indirect. In many cases, you want more indirect light than direct. So if you look at that particular fixture, you see it's actually double-sided. You can see that there's actually light that's shining up onto the ceiling grid on top of that fixture, and that's light that we call indirect light. So, and then the light at the bottom, of course, is projecting directly down onto the individuals or the tables or whatever, and we call that direct light. So you really want to think about, as you're defining what your lighting is, how can you get some indirect light? Because it just makes a much better overall wash in your lighting experience. So it might be something you want to think about. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC. Something else you want to be thinking about as you go. One of the main things when we think HVAC, we think noise levels, right? How noisy is that HVAC going to be in your room? You should have some standards defined for this in a learning space. You should not go above a certain noise level. So there's a few different criterias out there. Noise criterion, or NC, has kind of been the old classic here in the United States. The NR, or the noise, it's a European one. I don't remember what exactly it stands for, but in Europe they talk about NR. And then in the U.S. they're moving from NC to what's called NCB, which is a balanced noise criteria. I don't know why they didn't put the B, because that'd be B and C. That'd be very confusing. So they put the B at the back. So I actually appreciate that they did that. But so they refer to that as NCB, but it's actually a balanced noise criterion. It's just they've done a little bit different with the curves, with all that. But your HVAC people will know these numbers. They understand what these mean. Most HVAC, if you look at the specifications on an air conditioning unit, it will give you an NC number in most cases, right? So they understand this. So if you give them a number and say you should not go above this loudness or this much noise in the room for your air conditioning, they will totally understand that, and they'll be able to help you out and get that specified in the right way. The other thing is closets, right? So, this is a data closet, but this rack over here has some AV gear in it. This is in our Student Innovation Center. You want to make sure that those closets have separate thermostats that are on 24/7, right? I told the story in the earlier class. Especially when I was an integrator, we'd leave on a Friday afternoon. We'd come back Monday morning, and the rack room was 120 degrees. And you'd walk in, you'd go, what? And it turns out that the whole air conditioning system in the whole building was on timers for energy efficiency. And that also meant that the air conditioning turned off in all of the equipment closets, and because they weren't thinking about that in advance. So you want to make sure that any HVAC in dedicated spaces like that are specified to be 24/7, 365 dedicated thermostat, right? So just to make sure that those things are happening as needed. Furniture. You might not think about this, but furniture is clearly part of our infrastructure package, right? So this would involve teaching stations and tables and credenzas. And, there's a ton. You can go on out to the show floor. There's tons of manufacturers out there right now that have these types of things available to you that are well suited for use in a pro AV environment. This is a custom built one that we use from a company called Versteel. at Iowa State University. I don't love it. I don't hate it. There's some aspects of it that they really have customized it to our specifications. So there's some aspects of that are kind of nice.
Like the two built-in fridges.
Yeah, actually, so those are actually 2 built-in racks. There's actually 11 RU of rack built in on either side, but they do look like fridges. I will say that I was not in love with this particular laminate choice, but that was the interior designers that chose that particular laminate that I may not have chosen myself. But that's why I'm not an interior decorator, I guess, because I don't like that. But and apparently that's cool. Okay, to each their own. Yeah, exactly. Right, 100%. So, but no, just you want to make sure you're thinking through your furniture. How much furniture do you need? Where is the equipment going to be mounted? Is it going to be mounted in the room? We're really increasingly liking AV specific credenzas, especially for big conference rooms that are going to have some technology built in. We're really enjoying because they can look really nice. They can look like a nice piece of furniture, and yet they're ready suited with the fans and the power and everything that you need to really do well from an audiovisual perspective. So you really want to think through your furniture specifications as well. All right, so let's talk about making friends a little bit, and then I'm gonna actually do a lot more show and tell here of some of our specifications so that you can get a feel for those. But let's talk about building those relationships. So we've just established infrastructure is very important. We've established that there's just a lot of aspects of infrastructure that you need to be thinking about. So what you really want to do at this point is befriend the people that can help you get what you need from that perspective, right? So the first group that comes to mind is your campus facility teams. So for us, our group is called Facilities Planning and Management. And really what I encourage you to do is just focus your attention on meeting the project managers and construction managers that operate on your campus and make friends with them, okay? They are going to really make all the difference. The other thing is, if you begin to send them specifications and detailed drawings, they are going to be your new best friend because they do not want to figure that out themselves. And if they figure out that, hey, this person is here to help and is going to make the whole project go better and smoother, they are going to really appreciate getting to know you and listening to what you have to say. So again, providing them standards, drawings are worth 1,000 words, it's really going to help. One of the very first things I did in 2018 when I joined Iowa State is I went to the facilities team, right? And I met with the project managers, and we established a recurring monthly meeting. So we have 2 recurring monthly meetings with the facilities team. So they have 2 groups. They have the capital projects team, and then they have the small projects team. And so I have a monthly meeting with the capital projects project managers where we cover, sometimes these meetings are 5 minutes long, right? Which is great. We have a touch point, right? Sometimes these meetings can run long if there's a specific capital project that's coming online and they have needs. But we walk through the list of capital projects that are AV relevant to the campus, and we cover, what's the current status of that project. And then we do it again once a month with the small projects team, right? That has a much smaller, that they do the smaller stuff. But build those relationships, get those on recurring meetings. It's really going to do yourself a favor. Outside consultants is the other aspect of this. So you, again, engage early. Hint, befriending your FP&Ms or facilities project managers can really help you get involved early on these types of projects. Again, you're going to want to show these outside consultants written standards and details. One word, master format, right? If you can give them audiovisual specifications that are already formatted in what they refer to as master format, which is the standard building specifications format that all new construction are used. And actually, there it is for you. We are section 274100 would be audiovisual equipment. And if you can give them specifications in that format, they're going to again, they're going to love you because you just saved them a crap load of work, right? Because they were going to have to put that together themselves. And you hand them a specification and go, just throw this in the specification book when you put it together. And they're going to be like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do that. So, yeah, you're reducing their workload, right? So it's really going to help. And then, of course, general contractors, when this is, again, specifically around capital projects, you want to be at the table, right? You need to ask to be involved in their recurring project meetings. Typically they have at least a weekly meeting, and you do not need to go every week, but you work with them, say, hey, I'm going to go once a month. I'm going to make sure that everything's going well, or every other week. And you get involved and make sure that they're going to invite the electrical contractor. They're going to invite everyone else. So, it's no big deal for you to get asked to invited to these meetings, and they realize that it's probably going to save them headaches down the road if they have the right people involved. And so, yeah. So, question back here.
So, through the process of large projects, we've found that sometimes after turnover, there's surprises and stuff that we end up going back and fixing ourselves, and which can be quite extensive and labor draining. Are you involved with any milestone walks or inspections? And then also within your standards, do you put in anything additional for warranty and how that's after turnover, how that's operated?
So we don't have anything specifically written as far as milestone walkthroughs, right? But we just proactively request walkthroughs all the time, right? And we have now developed a relationship with them enough to where we pretty much have carte blanche to walk onto any capital project construction site at any stage of construction, as long as you have the safety vest, hard hat, glasses, boots. They don't care. We have pretty much free reign, right? So, yeah, but we typically, again, be nice, make friends. You tell them, hey, I think we're going to come do a walkthrough in such and such a time, such and such a date. It's give them advance warning, and they're like, yep, it's good, sounds good. And then, so yeah, it's like we're putting a new building in for our industrial engineering department right now. And me and my engineer, we walked it a couple weeks ago, right? And it was still still a whole lot of dirty concrete. But there were some places that are starting to put walls up, but not a lot of conduits in place yet. So we were a little early on it. But it's good to know, right? We saw where it was. And then we talked to the project manager and we said, hey, can you just let us know, give us like 1 week notice before you start putting drywall up. Okay. Just give us a week advance notice, and we'll come in, we'll walk every room, and we'll make sure that, conduits, back boxes, and everything are in place where we need them. And she said, great. Yeah. We'll let you know as soon as when we get to that point. So, yeah. And then, the next question was warranty. Yeah, so from an infrastructure perspective, that's kind of unique. That I don't know how that would work, right? But from an AV equipment perspective, we do have a written 1 year bumper to bumper in our standards for our AV contractors, right? So we expect a 1 year warranty from all external AV contractor work.
And that includes all the cabling that pulls through the conduit.
Yep. All right, so some of you were here this morning when I talked specifically about standards. So a couple of these slides are going to be repeat for you, but we do have a set what we call infrastructure standards. These are basically facility and construction specifications. Target audience, again, is those design consultants, your own internal facilities team, and general contractors. Lots of drawings. Some good stuff regarding coordination, making sure that the room's clean before the AV goes in, and then all the things we talked about, right? Here's what we expect for conduits, raceways, junction boxes, lighting, HVAC, projector and screen mounting, flat panel display needs, and the like. But here, standard details. This is where, if you can get these made up, this is where you're going to save yourself a whole lot of headache and a whole lot of life. So we are still in the process of developing these. We have a lot of them done, and a lot of these got put in use for this new building project, which was great. But these are basically, in the architecture and construction industry, they refer to these as standard details, right? This is basically a detail that they put once in a drawing package, and it basically, every place where this occurs in this project, thou shalt do it this way, right? Here is, for example, here's a infrastructure standard or standard detail for our projection mounting specification. So a couple of pieces of unistrut hung from the ceiling, a certain distance apart. Actually, that 6.5 inches is actually the distance of, there's a 6-inch mounting plate from Chief that fits just perfectly. We can just mount Chief mount right to that unistrut when our team gets in there, and then you're off to the races, right? Makes your whole life a whole lot easier if that's sitting there in place. We even say like it needs to be 1 foot above the ceiling. That's just far enough that you can get the ceiling tiles in and out without any headache, but not so far up that you can't reach it when you go up to move that ceiling tile, right? So we kind of just give that some of that specification there. But anyway, so the types of details that you're going to want to do here, again, flat panel mounting details. I showed that detail in an earlier show, and it'll be the next slide here. Projector mounting detail, which I have here. Screen mounting. What do you want at a rack location? How many outlets? What kind of conduits do you want? You're really going to want to get them done in AutoCAD, right? So if you don't do AutoCAD, find somebody who can, or do them in some other format that that can be transferred to AutoCAD. And then you're going to want to provide them to everyone involved in both the DWG AutoCAD format as well as PDF copies. The project managers often don't have AutoCAD themselves, so they always appreciate the PDF versions, but then the architects and engineers are going to want the AutoCAD version to drop into the drawings. So let's show a couple of those. So this is a drawing standard that we have in place for a flat panel display. Again, you can see the specific specification for the chief box of interest. You can see that there's a deep 2-inch by 4-inch box with 2 network jacks shown on the outside of said box. You can see that there's backer board listed 3 feet high by 3 stud cavities wide, at least 1 foot above the box. You can see that we have specific junction boxes that we want below. And actually, these are wrong. I need to update this because those should all be the 4 and 11/16 by 4 and 11/16 boxes instead of the 4 by 4 boxes. I need to update this standard drawing to get that corrected. But yeah, just kind of lays it all out exactly what you want. And then here is, so then the idea is now you have variations of a theme, right? So this is basically that same thing for what we like an active learning space. So let's say you have a table shoved up right to the wall, okay? And you have 2 TVs mounted on the wall, but you have a table right here. So you can see here, like here's the table height, and then here's the bottom of the display height, and then here's the center of these boxes that are power, where your little touch panel is going to go, and it's like mounted then between the top of the table and the bottom of centered perfectly between the top of the table and the bottom of the display, right there where the users can touch them nice and easily above the tabletop surface. And this is like a dual display setup then for that, right? So, and I have this drawing for a single display in that scenario, and then I have drawings for a digital signage display that doesn't have the boxes below. And so you can go on and go ahead and make variations of a theme on these once you get rolling, and they appreciate that very much because each one has a very specific application. So here's another version, right? So what if you have a concrete block wall instead? So actually, if you didn't know this, FSR has a really cool box that's designed specifically for use in concrete or CMU, concrete block. And it's the part number up there. So you can see how that works with the box in there. Conduits coming down in the 2 open holes. So concrete blocks have 2 holes in them. If you look at them. So the conduits are run right down the middle of those holes from up to down and fit into that CMU box. and you get everything you get everything you need in a concrete block wall too, even for a back box. So
Why did you pick 4 11/16 instead of a 4-inch box?
So the 4 and 11/16" boxes have bigger knockouts for conduits. So you can get 1.25 inch, 1.5 in a 4 1/16 by 4 1/16" box, or you cannot get them in a 4 inch by 4 inch box. Typically a 4 inch by 4 inch box is limited to 1 inch conduit max. So those are the fun facts that that was something that I just learned in the last year, and I've been doing this a long time, right? And so you learn along the way. The beauty is, once you learn those things, then you put them in the specifications, so they're there for forever and for always. But all right, so one more here, and then we're gonna pull up some other stuff here. So this is our standard detail for how we mount a projection screen above. Oops. Shoot. Elbow hit the wrong spot. All right, so a projection screen that's recessed into a acoustic ceiling, right? So this is our standard detail for that, where again we're showing where we want the unistrut to go. We're showing the conduit and a junction box for the manual screen controls, and then we also show a conduit from that location over to the rack location for the control cable that you want for your control system to control that projection screen. Not everyone's going to do this. We prefer to have always have a manual up down for every screen, as well as have the control system control it. Because anyway, it just makes our life happier and easier for a lot of reasons to always have that manual control also. So, but that just kind of shows that, like, this is everything that we want, everything that we need, and you're going to have everything in place when you get there, ready to go. So we're going to get out of this for a second, and I'm going to show you a couple things here. So, all right, so I just want to show you this because this is actually, this is from the drawing package, the official drawing package for this new IMSE building. And you can see that they have just taken the AutoCAD details that I drew for them, and they just drop them in here wholesale. Okay? Again, I am saving them time, making their lives easier. They love me, and I'm getting everything I want. And this now made the official drawing packet for that building, right? And so there's actually it rolls to 2 pages, right, of standard details, different variations on the theme of various mounting points. And then so they gave each one like a C1, C12, and then throughout the drawing package, when there's a flat panel on the wall, it just says reference detail C12, right, for where that needs to be. And so the contractors know that that's what they're supposed to go do in that specific location. And yeah, so it does happen. If you give them the right information, they will actually put them into the drawing package, right? So the other thing I want to show you then is I want to show you this. All right, so this is the written specifications in what they refer to as the master format. So if you've ever been a part of a new building project, you will see they literally have like a big project will have 2 books, 2 binders about this big, volume A and volume B, that is full of text like this around everything. How the concrete works, how the steel works, how the doors work, how the door handles work, how the fire extinguisher systems works. And so, but if you can sneak yours in there, right, you can make their life easier if you can do this. Actually, this is the furniture one. So this is section 125642, which is audiovisual furniture. And I'm telling them what in this case, we're telling them that we're going to use the Versteel. And then we're telling them for their business building that they're going to use the Spectrum model number. Yeah, and so that's like a very short section. Then the other one is, all right, this is 274100. This is audiovisual communications. And this is, again, all written or all formatted exactly as they would typically see it. Reference standards. So audiovisual contractor scope, here's what they're going to be responsible for doing. Quality assurance, what we expect from the materials, delivery, storage, and handling. And then here's where we get to, down here, we get to then architectural infrastructure products, right? So your floor boxes will be this, right? We're going to be using, for a wooden or raised floors, you're going to use a FSR FL 500P, and it's going to be 8-inch deep unless otherwise architecturally constrained. You're going to choose a cover as needed for the application, default to this cover as needed, and inside the box, you're going to have 1 2-gang for double duplex power, 1 2-gang for network with 1-inch conduit to cable tray, 1 4-gang for AV installation with 1.25-inch conduit to AV rack location. And then we do it all again for poured concrete. And so, it takes you a little bit. And then there's also round poke throughs, which they drill an 8-inch hole through a concrete floor, and they drop this box in there. Overflow raceway, which we don't ever want to have to use, but sometimes it happens. And then we talk about display boxes, back boxes. The approved box is this, right? So again, this is a little more constrained than some other documentation that we have. We also have this more in a text form that's not in that master format, right, that we have laid out here. But again, this talks about, cut through here, right? So conduits, unless they're specified, they shall be 1.25 inch. Shall be provided with a pull cord inside, pull string already inside, labeled at both ends. Conduit sections between pull boxes should be less than 50 feet and have bends totaling no more than 180 degrees. So again, a lot of dry details, but also the things that are going to make your life better down the road, right? As you go. So with that, I have a lot more of these we could show if you guys want to, but let's do this first. Let's go to questions. Are there any questions? And if we don't have good questions, then we'll go back and I'll show you more stuff. So
I had a quick question, a little bit different, which was, what do you recall your impressions or lessons learned when you switched from integrator to being inside?
yeah, I love that. I love that question. I've done a whole talk on that at a conference before, right? Lessons learned from a former integrator. So a couple things. So the thing that I love most about higher education audiovisual is the people, right? And how interactive everyone is, how sharing they are. For example, I'm going to give you all of these documents and drawings. I'm just going to hand them to you, right? Because that's how this rolls, right? So I'm going to give them to you all in AutoCAD format and in PDF, whatever you want. I'm going to hand them off. When you're an integrator, you don't hand off anything to anyone for any reason without just cause for being fired. And so it's been so refreshing to have a problem, put it up on a listserv, and have 6 answers within the next 30 minutes on how you're going to solve said problem. God, I just love it so much to be in an open place like this. So that's one thing I would say. I'd say from a from an AV perspective. One of the things I would say is, because I have more lessons learned for the contractor or for the integrators, right? Some things that I encourage integrators at this point is like, hey, by the way, you're not always going to be the smartest person in the room. Accept that. Be okay with that, right? And listen to your customer because they may know more than you, right? Work with your customer, right, to make sure that, because they might have an integration team. They probably know how they want things done. Listen to them. From the in-house integrator side, one thing I would encourage everyone to say is do not be a blocker. So if you have an external integrator that you have contracted, you should make sure that they get access to the end users. You should never, ever, ever be the blocker or force you to be the in-between between the AV contractor and your end users. Your AV contractor will do a much better job if they can talk to the end users of the space, who will be able to tell them exactly what they need, so your outside contractor can do a proper needs analysis. So do not be a blocker, be a conduit where you can make sure that you're getting the right people connected with one another. You saw what I did there? See what I did there? Yeah, Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation for writing in that master format? Not so much the words, but that, indents and stuff.
Yeah. So the quick answer is no. It took me half a day to format that document after I got it done, to get it formatted the way it should be formatted, right? And
What should be formatted has to do with your architect who will say, actually, we like this indentation style. Reformat it.
sure,
The right way of doing it.
right. Well, no, actually, no. I mean,
You don't have, that's
in most cases, okay, master format is like a master format.
Yeah,
It
is a standard that is the
right.
way, but sometimes architects know better than master.
Well, yeah, of course they do. Everyone always everyone always knows better, right? Including me. Clearly, I'm here talking, so I clearly know better, right? So in most cases, there's actually specific software packages that most architects use that does this for them automatically. Most of the people are not grabbing a Word document and creating their master format specifications on a Word document. They have special tools that are all designed to help them format those types of things. And most of them are preloaded with gazillions of boilerplate things, right? And so most people aren't trying to write them by hand. So no, I don't have any good advice for you other than it's painful, and you're welcome to take mine and use it as a starting point for formatting whatever you need. So
Somebody usually on the general contractor staff, that's all they do is
yep.
that. You could give them like a Word document.
Yep. Yeah, they could. Yep. But again, the closer you have it to the formatting that they're expecting, they're gonna appreciate it, right? So, 100%. Probably. Probably. Yep. Yep.
I just wanted to go back to another question in regards to integration, external, internal. I mean, it's a combination. Coming from the private sector myself as an integrator, I'm really biased. Like, yeah, every school should have an integrator. But if you have a good relationship with the company and they're doing what you want, you're pretty good there too, also. But if you get a good key core group of integrators that come in, then you're gonna save a lot more money because they can do everything exactly how you want. You know, yeah, and so it's just there's plus and minuses. So there's not one better than the other, to be honest with you. It's just what you have, your budget, the people, the relationship you build with, and so that's what happens a lot of times. Because you can have really bad integrators, great people internally, but they don't deal with the whole. You know, here in Oregon, you gotta have a license for low voltage. Washington and I think Idaho, I don't know. But anywhere else, as long as one person has a license, they're gonna have contract to do it. So it just really depends. You get a good combination. That's really.
Yeah.
Just gonna say we got like 5-ish minutes till the next presentation.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, then we'll call it. We'll get out for the next people.